As humans created with emotion, I believe there's one emotion that resonates with everyone in the whole world. And that emotion is fear. We're all afraid of something. Maybe for you, you're afraid of spiders, or heights, or maybe you're afraid of the dark. Or on a more serious note, perhaps you're afraid of rejection. You have a fear of loss, a fear of betrayal. We all have fears. And so when we read the Bible, when we read in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, when we read of Jesus' followers, it's no surprise that they were also men with fear. We're going to look at one of them followers just now. His name is Peter. We read about him in the Bible in Luke chapter 22, verses 54 to 62. We read that he denies knowing Jesus because he is gripped with fear. These events took place just after Jesus was betrayed by Judas, arrested and brought to trial. While that was all happening, Peter, Jesus' follower, was off in a courtyard. And as he was in this courtyard, he sat there beside an open fire, thinking about the events that just happened. And as he was sitting there, a slave girl approaches him and she says to Peter, "Hey, I know you. You were with Jesus." And Peter, to our surprise, denies knowing him. He says to her, No, not me. I do not know him." Peter denies Jesus. And what makes this more significant is that earlier on in the Gospel of Luke, in chapter 22 and verse 31 to 34, we read that Peter says that he is going to die for Jesus. He will do everything for him. But Jesus tells Peter that in some time in the future that he is going to deny knowing him 3 times. 3 times he's going to deny knowing him. And he's offended by this. He says, "Surely not." He says, "I will die for you, Jesus. I will not deny you." And yet here we have him in this scene, denying him once. As the scene unfolds, another man goes up to Peter and says, "I recognize you. You were with Jesus." For a second time, Peter says, No, I wasn't," and denies knowing Jesus again. And then after an hour passed, a third and a final person walks up to Peter and says, "I know you. You were surely with Jesus." And for the third and final time, Peter denies knowing Jesus. He swears that he has no connection to him. At that moment, a rooster crowed. And as the rooster crowed, Peter was reminded of Jesus' words spoken to him just a few verses earlier in Luke's Gospel. He realized that it all came true. He had denied Jesus not once, not twice, but 3 times. And once Peter is hit with this realization, we read at the very end in Luke 22, verse 62, that he went out and wept bitterly. It's a very sad scene. It's a sad night for Peter. As much as he wanted to obey Jesus and obey God, he didn't. He failed. He let Jesus down. In other words, he sinned. You know what? It's the same for you and for me. Whether we like it or not, we all deny Jesus. We have all sinned in our lives. We all, in our own thoughts and our actions, outwardly and inwardly, deny Jesus. We deny that he is God, that he is King. We deny that he was on this earth and that he died for sin. We all deny Jesus, but there is hope for you, because there's hope for Peter, as there's hope for me as well. There's hope because there's forgiveness at the cross. Because little did Peter know that in those moments when he was denying knowing Jesus, that Jesus in his love for Peter was fulfilling his mission, his plan for redemption, his plan to save Peter from his sins, even the sin of denying knowing Jesus. Because Jesus in those moments was going to the cross to take the punishment for his sin. And so we see that there is forgiveness at the cross through faith in him. But later on, we see more of Jesus' forgiveness in another gospel, in the Gospel of John, in chapter 21, verses 15 to 19. This takes place after Jesus rises from the dead. I'm sorry, there might be some spoilers in there for you for tomorrow, but Jesus does rise from the dead. And after he rises from the dead, we read in John 21 that Jesus meets with Peter. He meets with him, and on a beach they have breakfast beside another fire, a different type of fire. And as they're having breakfast, Jesus asks Peter 3 times, "Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me?" 3 times to match the 3 times that Peter, of course, denied Jesus. And each time Peter says, "You know I love you. Yes, I love you. Lord, I love you." To which Jesus responds at the very, very end with 2 words. He says, "Follow me." Jesus has forgave Peter. Jesus has offered Peter a second chance. Even though he sinned, even though he rebelled against him, even though he denied knowing him, Jesus forgave him. How could this be? It's because of the cross. Because on the cross he took the punishment for sin and he rose again victorious. And again, it's the same for you. Even if you think you're the most sinful person ever, that you've done so much wrong in your life, it doesn't matter how much wrong you think you have done, Jesus' death is good enough, sufficient enough to save even you. There is forgiveness at the cross.